Hey, media, we'll give everyone just another minute here just to load in before we get started. If you want to ask a question to Don, please hit the raise hand button. Start with Joe Haggerty.
Hey, Donnie. How's it going?
Morning, Joe. How are you?
Good, thanks. Obviously, there was a bit of a need at the defenseman spot when the season ended, but just with the retirement of Kevin Miller and now Jeremy Lauzon getting lost in the expansion draft, how urgent is that need to get some defensemen, or at least one, in the offseason, and particularly the big physical sort of type that Lauzon and Miller were?
Well, obviously, we want to wish Kevin Miller and his family well. A very difficult decision for him to make, and a tough loss for us in both senses, as you described, Joe. With Jeremy, who was just coming into his own despite some injuries. Wishing him well with Seattle. Disappointing that you're going to lose, and we all felt that we were going to lose a good player in this exercise, and we did. But you're right. We have to identify that we have a couple of holes and gaps that we have to fill. Certainly addressed the long-term future of Brandon, and happy to have him back in the fold as an important part of our as our defense is put together. And yeah, we have to address another need, if not one, if not two, from a depth perspective, and also to handling heavy minutes in all situations. So we're going to try and be aggressive in that front and see if we can address the need.
Steve Conroy.
Hey, Donnie, what has your communication with David Krejci been in recent weeks, and do you know what his intentions are?
I have been in touch with David and going to respect all his privacy and decisions. At this point in time, has not given a firm indication. As he referenced before, he's got some things that he wants to address, and then he'll let us know. But yeah, I have been in regular communication with David, and there's no timeline to make decisions.
Well, you're coming up on free agency. Do you have any kind of? You said there's no deadline, but you have to move forward. Does this put you in a bind at all?
No, I mean, we have guys that will step into roles. Obviously, we'll address needs and throughout our lineup, and certainly explore options to have. And address it as we come. We certainly have to acknowledge that it would be a big hole if we had to fill it, but a real good opportunity for someone if we do go in that direction. We're going to have to find a way to spread things around if David makes a decision otherwise. But that hasn't been the indication. We're hopeful that he would come back, and we'll see.
Okay, thank you.
Kevin Dupont.
Don, two questions. First one's just point of procedure. Is there 1 o'clock today? The rosters are unfrozen, if I understand this right. So does that preclude any team from trading rights to a RFA or pending UFA between now and the draft?
No, the roster freeze opens up at 1 o'clock. So you're fully able to either extend your UFA guys between now and the 28th, or be trading and active. And I suspect there'll be some things coming out of last night's announcements on the players, as well as the freeze being lifted at 1 o'clock today between now and the draft.
Yeah, but in terms of the rights, then you could trade away rights to a guy or acquire rights to a guy.
Correct.
Okay, fine. And all that said, any update on Taylor Hall?
I made significant progress on Taylor, so I hope that we will find a finish line. Looking forward to hopefully having him back as a big part of what we're trying to do for this year and moving forward. So made significant progress there.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Hi, good morning, Don. Two questions. First, specifically on the left side, when you look at your philosophy here, when you have a player like Grzelcyk, Zaboral, given their skill sets, and maybe you throw Riley in that mix too, and these are not necessarily guys that are designed for the heavy lifting, especially on the kill. So when you're trying to work with those existing pieces, how does that shape the type of player that you'd like to identify to perhaps help you on the left side?
Ideally, you'd want an all situational minutes player that certainly has been in all those pressure points of, as you mentioned, the kill. Maybe you can handle in the power play, but not unlike Charlie McAvoy, where you've got it impacts a game 60 minutes. The other guys, Brizzy obviously has done a lot of great things for us in puck moving. Can complement on the power play as well. Zaboral was moving pucks last year. I ran into some injuries, but with the loss of Jeremy, there's a penalty killing component there. Johnny Moore healthy will obviously address some of that from a depth perspective, but we have to go out and add to our group. So we have to address that.
Okay, and then second, on your restricted guys, Richie, Kasha, and Zach, will you issue qualifying offers to all of them or no?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Matt Porter.
Morning, Don. Two quick ones. With your goaltending, you have two guys who are under team control. In Jeremy and Dan. Do you see this as going to market for a quote unquote stopgap type of guy, or whether it's via trade to try to address that, or do you think it'll be Dan and Jeremy come October?
Well, we're certainly exploring all of our options, including, the Tuca surgery coming up and the unknown a little bit in terms of how that's going to be coming out of surgery. So we are looking to address it from a depth perspective and add to that group. We have some flexibility in that regard. We think very highly of both goaltenders, in Jeremy and Daniel. So we feel like we're in good shape depth-wise organizationally. But we're probably going to look to add to that group and have a little bit of a veteran presence there that could offset both of those guys who have a bright future.
Okay. And then are you negotiating with Mike Riley? And if so, where are those negotiations?
Yeah, constant communication with Mike's group. Haven't found a finish line there, but thought highly of Mike and what he added to our group. So going to continue to talk there and see what might transpire. He has some options as it gets closer to to the 28th, and may want to explore that. But certainly, I've been in touch with Pat and Mike.
Okay, thanks.
We'll go to Kirk.
Hey, Don, Kirk Ludicky here. Have a couple of draft questions for you. First of all is what would be talked about the process. It's been an unprecedented year for you and your staff in terms of, access to evaluation, sample sizes, things like that. Can you talk about how that's affected your process as a team?
Welcome back, Kurt. First of all,
Thank you.
Yeah, the process has certainly been unique. Number of players in certain leagues we didn't get to see live nearly as much as would in years past. So you're relying on smaller sample size and underage projections of players, be it their own growth and development. So it's presented some challenges. Done an awful lot of video work, done a lot of background work, and sort of diving below. And I think every team is probably trying to do it in the same direction from that front. As I said, I think it presents probably a little more variance in terms of what the projections are for players. As you go through, maybe outside of the top 10 players in the draft that people probably feel comfortable with. I think you've got a spectrum of players, probably from there on through the second and third rounds that may have greater variance associated with it, and that's just associated with really, as you described, the challenges and the uniqueness of what we've all been dealing with, and lack of viewings, live viewings in particular.
Typically, I wouldn't ask you about a specific player, but where you guys are sitting, and this player does have local ties and is probably going to go very early. Could you just shed some light on Maddie Veneers and what you and your staff think of him as a player?
Yeah, typically I wouldn't go in depth on any individual player. I do believe Maddie Veneers is a special player and will go into the upper echelon of the draft. It would take significant assets for me to get up in there, I believe. I think really highly of the player, and he's got a great motor, got a great skill set, and the team is very fortunate to add into their stable of players.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Good luck.
Thanks. Thank you.
Emily Benjamin.
Hi, Don. Just wanted to ask if there were any updates. You mentioned Tuca surgery, if there's anything new on that front, and if you have a date for the surgery.
Yeah, he's coming up in the end of the month here, returning to the United States to have the procedure done with Dr. Kelly, and then we'll just allow him to go through the rehab process and both mentally and physically see where he's at. I had great communication with Tuca throughout the year and the end of the year, and understanding that obviously we had more knowledge than most people in terms of what he was doing with, and really just allowing the medical stuff to be at the forefront of what's important for Tuca and his health.
Jimmy Murphy.
Hey, Donnie, how are you?
Good, Jimmy, how are you?
Good. I'm just, getting back to the talking about defensemen. What's the market, in your opinion, been like in terms of trying to find a defenseman, whether it's free agency or the trade market?
I've only been dealing in the trade market, but I haven't reached free agency. So again, the Seattle process was one that was probably putting a little bit of creating some gumminess and in terms of what the overall movement part of it was. You saw a couple of deals right before. And then maybe there'll be some coming out, communication with Seattle. They've got a supply there now that other people, including ourselves, may want access to, and have to have some discussions there. And then things, kind of open up as you're coming into the draft to see whether or not there'll be any moving parts. But, the market is tight. The supply is what it is. And what we'll hope to be aggressive to find a player that, or maybe two that want to play for us and we want it.
And just to follow up quickly with Seattle, what was your take on how this was similar or different from the Vegas expansion experience?
I think Seattle was the only team that should comment on in terms of the process, because they went through it and obviously they were well prepared. They had a strategy. They went out and executed to what they feel is the right thing. The rest of us have to react to that. We didn't get to dictate the strategy. I have my own opinions on it that maybe down the road I'll share with you, but ideally, Ronnie and his staff executed the job that they wanted to do, and then I don't think it's done from what they're trying to do, and it was different than George and his group. Obviously, George and them had tremendous amount of success, and I'm sure Ronnie wants to have similar success.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
Butch Stearns. Butch, if you want to unmute.
Sorry about that. You guys hear me?
We do now.
All right. Hey, Donnie, how are you?
Good, Butch, how are you?
Hey, with free agency approaching, can you just give us whatever insight you can give us into your thinking in regards to your own free agents and then possibly acquiring other free agents? In other words, is it a priority to get your guys signed before July 28th? And then from another guy's perspective, would you describe your mindset as being aggressive or cautious, or how would you, whatever you can say?
Obviously we went forward with Brandon, and maybe because both the player and the team felt it was the right time for things, and hopefully that's how we found the deal, and very happy to have done that. Every deal sort of has its own timeline, regardless of what deadlines are, and sometimes that's the only way that it gets the deal done with some of the RFAs and the UFAs, depending on whether or not they're comfortable with the discussions. And in Taylor's case, as I said, made significant progress there, and that's a player that's on the doorstep of unrestricted and being able to talk to other teams. So that's a unique dynamic as well when you're going through it. You certainly do your due diligence as to what teams are planning on signing. A lot of times they don't give it up in terms of what their position is, and they're trying to gauge what players will be available. And obviously the Seattle situation, who they were taking, and they selected some unrestricted free agents and signed them. So, you might have projected that they would have been in the marketplace, and now you got to pivot and might force you to be a little more aggressive, or as the market said last year, it might have been better to wait. And again, it's an ever evolving, changing dynamic, and what we faced, this year with a flat cap and maybe in a couple of years as well. The projection part of it is a big part of what you're trying to do when you put the pieces together and be a competitive team.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Last one, Logan Mullen.
Hi, Don. With Tuukka, how does the surgery impact negotiations with him? Is that the type of thing that you'll wait on, or would you treat it just like, he'd be ready for the start of the season?
Well, he won't be ready for the start of the season. We know that, and we know the timeline associated with it. Tuukka and I's communication with he and Marcus has been good. Just allowing him to get healthy first and foremost, and see where he's at after that as he goes through both mentally and physically. And Tuukka's certainly earned that right to make sure he's making the right decisions for his own health and well-being and where he wants to be from a playing standpoint. So he was very, very honest with us in communicating that, and he was honest in terms of what we'd be comfortable with going forward, and then we'll see how he progresses from phase to phase.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don, and thank you, media, for joining us.
All right. Thanks, everybody.